Okay, can everybody hear me okay? You can just throw it up in the chat, that'd be great if you could. Awesome, thank you very much, Sharon, I appreciate that, it's great. Okay, we're gonna get started with our session on document accessibility. So welcome, today's session is Document Accessibility 101. My name is Andrew Drummond. I work for the Department of Disabilities. I'm the Director of IT Accessibility Policy and Programs. There's a bio sheet in front of you on the screen right there. I'm originally from the UK. I went to school in London and Leeds. I'm a certified expert witness in the area of assistive and inclusive technologies, and I've also been certified by the IAAP in accessibility. Fun fact about myself, I used to work on a submarine off the coast of Africa many years ago. So what is the IT Accessibility Initiative? The Maryland Department of Disabilities Accessibility Initiative supports state agencies, offices, and entities to meet Maryland's non-visual access standards. Primary purpose is to improve policies and practices in relation to state IT procurement and to ensure that all Maryland citizens have equal access to state IT solutions. Some of the services we offer, we provide evaluations of various technology platforms. That obviously includes application testing, web app testing, website testing. We provide consultations to state agencies, offices, and other state initiatives. We do provide technical assistance, IT accessibility trainings like the one you're attending today. And we have an awesome internship and mentoring program for future UX designers and IT professionals. We have every college semester we have somebody come along from a local Maryland university, and we teach them all about IT accessibility, and they learn how to test websites and mobile apps, and they learn all about web content accessibility guidelines. They learn more about disabilities and inclusivity, and it's a great experience. A lot of these folks end up working in UX design. Some of them end up working in mainstream IT fields, but it's definitely been a good initiative. I think we've had several interns, and it's been a very successful program so far. So the agenda today, obviously quick introduction. We're going to get into what print disabilities are. We're going to talk about document. There's going to be looking at document accessibility, making documents accessible, and then quick Q&A if we have time at the end. Okay, what is a print disability? Print disability is any condition that's going to prevent an end user from effectively reading print, and that could be blindness, it could be low vision, it could be dyslexia, or it could be a physical disability where a person's not able to pick up a book, and they have to use some other means of assistive technology or inclusive technology to access that content. Barriers to access. Vision is a barrier to the vision or lack of vision or low vision. It can be a barrier to accessing digital content, especially if the content is not created in an accessible manner. So obviously we do a lot of work around making sure that websites and digital content is accessible for those with visual difficulties. Next, hearing. It's very important that hearing can prevent individuals having access to digital content, especially if the digital content is obviously multimedia content, and if there's no captions, we see captions at the bottom of the screen here today. It's obviously very important to make sure that our digital content is captioned for those that have challenges with hearing. Cognitive, also known as cognition, can definitely be a barrier to access. This could be individuals that have an intellectual disability and individuals who have ADHD and have a hard time focusing on what they're reading. Sometimes it's almost like the words are skipping on the page and they lose track of where they're reading, or the words are skipping on the screen and they lose track of where. And also, you obviously have learning disabilities, dyslexia, that obviously impacts individuals' ability to read and comprehend what's presented to them. Next, physical disability. This would be, in this particular area, this would be a barrier, would be accessing the content. Maybe an individual needs to use a sip and puff switch. They need to use an assistive technology device. Perhaps they need to use a modified keyboard or a modified mouse. And these would be barriers if these individuals didn't have these assistive technologies, which obviously make their ability to access the content much easier. So jumping into the meat and potatoes, we're first going to look at and start thinking about images and alt text. So as you're creating digital content, we need to ensure that if you're putting images in that digital content, which many people are, which does make sense, if you're putting images in that digital content, it's important that there's alternate text that goes along with that particular image. And obviously context is everything. What does the image convey? Does the image have a message? Is the information within the image located elsewhere within that paragraph or that sentence, the accompanying sentence, or anywhere else with that? Is the image a link to a website? Does it take you somewhere else? So it's obviously important that when we're adding images and we have alt text in there, it's very important that we make sure that we're presenting that same content and functionality. We should limit the description, limit this alt text to usually just a few words and maximum 1 or 2 sentences if absolutely needed. If you have an image and it's like maybe it's a clip art and you're creating this document and you're kind of thinking about it and saying, hey, I really don't need that image. It's kind of decorative. If you don't need that image, probably best just to remove that image. If you kind of like the image in there because you think it serves some form of purpose, then obviously it definitely needs alt text. If the image has words, you definitely need to explain what's happening. Or if the image has a message, you definitely need to explain, in a succinct manner to the end user. So that would be the alt text. We're gonna keep going over this over the next few slides, so you get a really good understanding of what alt text would be and what would be appropriate alternate description. Final point, and never ever use image of, picture of in the alt text description. The end user who's relying on alt text is predominantly they're either blind or they have low vision. So when they come across alt text, it's assumed that it's an image or a picture of something. So you can take that out. It's just redundant. Okay, so we've got some examples here. We've got a series of slides. I'll read through the example, and then we're going to just have chat. You guys, I want you guys to. This is obviously an interactive session. Now you guys are going to put your answers in chat. Okay, so example 1, we have a picture of George Washington. He's kind of front and center, and there's a statement below. The statement is, because of his role as the commander-in-chief of American forces in the Revolutionary War, and later the first president of the United States, George Washington is often called the father of his country. And that kind of ends that statement. Next, we have 4 options below of what would make the most sense, what would be the most appropriate alternate text for the image in example 1. So option A would be image of George Washington. Option B would be George Washington, the first president of the United States. Option C would be an empty alt attribute, which is in HTML, which is alt equals open close speech quotation marks. That no alt attribute, what that does is it basically lets a screen reader know that, hey, there's alt text here, there's an alt description here for this particular image, but I want you to actually ignore it. And then the final would be D, would be George Washington. So let's, I'm gonna just have a quick look in chat and see what you guys are coming up with. We've got A, B, C, D, and let's see what y'all thought. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of D's, a lot of D's. A lot of D's. I'm seeing a lot of D's and a lot of B's. Okay. So I think B looks like a decent answer. However, it also within the text below, it actually, and once you're thinking about it contextually, B is actually already stated within the text. So I probably wouldn't go with, I probably wouldn't go with B. I probably wouldn't go with D. I mean, you could go with D or you could go with B, but likely what I would go with would be the alt attribute, the null alt attribute, and just actually go ahead and skip that. I don't know if we need to know there's an image there. If you are blind, I don't know if you need to know if there's a picture of George Washington, because the paragraph is about George Washington, and we also know that he's the first president. But either B or D would fine answers, but I would probably go with C. But this is definitely subjective. At least this one is. So we're gonna move on to the next one. Okay. Next example it says example 9, but this is our second example. You have an image of looks like a black gentleman and a white gentleman shaking hands. They're both wearing, they both have shirts and suits on. It's focused on the handshake. Okay, so the example would be, the text that accompanies this would be, our business promises the best service you'll find on the planet. Our team is professionally trained to offer excellent customer services throughout the contract negotiation process. Customer satisfaction is our top priority and is guaranteed, or your money back. Yeah, it sounds like this might be a good vendor to work with for those in procurement. Anyway, so we've got a choice of 4 alt descriptions. Option A is handshake. Option B is businessmen shake hands to complete a contract. C is the null alt attribute. And D would be, we guarantee our professional services. So just I'm going to throw open chat and see what you guys came up with. Good. Usually there's not really any, and just so folks know, yep, awesome, seeing lots and lots and lots of answers. So it seemed like the kind of mixed, it was a mixture of A and C, and I would agree with C. A could be used as well if you wanted just to describe that image, but in my opinion, I would probably lean with C when I've spoke with other colleagues who are blind, and I've went through this with them. They've actually also said C would be good for them. So you could either go with A or you could go with C, and that seems like the general consensus. So we'll move to the next example. Okay, so it says example 8, but it's really example 3, so I apologize about that. And the text that we're looking at it says content text here. And then we have this really nice decorative line that you'd find in probably one of those old period drama books, one of those kind of Jane Austen novels. And then it says footer text here. So you've got content text here, then you have that nice decorative line, and then underneath that it says footer text here. And we have, again, we're back with 4 options. Option A is decorative line. B is beginning of footer. C is separator. D is the null alt attribute. So let's see what you guys think of. Let's have a little look. Okay, so it looks like the consensus is, well, looks like decorative line. And I'm just going to go back to a question by Anthony, and I've just lost the question. Question, if you choose the null alt attribute, would that indicate that the alt tag was overlooked? Yep, the alt tag will be skipped. So the screen reader will detect it and then just move along and not verbalize. So, yep. Okay, so we could go with I'd probably decorative line or separator. I think either of them are fine. But the most important part of these examples is really just to get everybody thinking about good alt text. There's not really always a right, there's not a 100% right answer. So it's definitely these are all subjective, as you can tell. There's no real right or wrong answer most of the time. Definitely just about you thinking about that process and at least spending a little bit of time. Wow. So we have a map of the United States of America and the southern portion of Canada in front of us on top of the screen. The map also indicates, for those that can't see the screen, the map also indicates all of the states within the U.S. And I believe it has also the capital of the U.S. marked, and it has lots of major cities within each state marked. Sometimes it's just one state, one city. Sometimes it's several. So we have a long list here of possible options for alt text. The first one is map of the United States. That's option 1. Option 2 is map of United States listing major cities. Option 3 is map of showing United States and major cities in various colors. 4, map of USA with Washington, D.C. marked as a star. Next, example of a map. Next, topological map of United States. Next, map showing Maine in California, Texas, Maine in California, Texas, Idaho in green, etc., or a link to a Wikipedia page on the United States. So let's see what you guys are thinking. Yep, I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Barr and Mr. Barrows on this one. So this would be a map of the United States listing major cities. Yep, and I'm agreeing with Kendra as well. Tondi. So yeah, it looks like quite a few people have went with yep. Maria as well. Yep, quite a few folks. Awesome. Sharon as well. Well, guys, I definitely appreciate the input, and it sounds like this is the first one we definitely all have consensus on, so that's good. Okay, so as we think about making documents accessible, there's some design principles we should definitely think about. First is we should be using headings. Headings start from H1 through H6. Then structure, making sure the document's structured in a logical and coherent manner. And then if there's any links, having link text that makes sense. An example of link text that doesn't make sense would be www.123456.com. Like the end user has no idea where that's going. Well, they know it's going to that particular site, but they don't know what that site's about. That site could be about gardening. That site could be about booking a holiday to Jamaica, you have no idea what that's about. So there needs to be some context there. Next would be accessible table creation, forms, buttons, checkboxes, and other interactive tools. Then design considerations and alt text and text descriptions. We've done a lot already on alt text and text descriptions. Feel like we're good and super comfortable there. Okay, so in order of things to think about when you're using Microsoft Word, a lot of people will actually, and I think this is okay, totally fine. They'll create a document from scratch. They'll go through, create the entire document, and then go back through and check for accessibility. And then, they'll look at the structure. Then they'll make sure to add images through alt text, and they'll use the accessibility checker. Not so long ago, Microsoft really, invested a lot of time and energy and money in building out their accessibility checker, and it's fantastic now. It basically does everything. It almost like almost replaces this webinar that you're sitting in right now once you fire that up. So, okay, next we're going to move to using headings correctly. So as I prefaced earlier, we have these headings when we're looking at when we're thinking about building out documents and heading structure. Whether you're thinking about building a PDF, a Microsoft Word document, RTF file, or you're building a website, how you structure the site would be using H1, which would be the most important rank, and then H6 would be the least important rank. It's best practice and standard practice to only use H1 once per page, and quite often per document. So that's definitely helpful to, because when you're thinking about that H1, it's the most important heading on the page. And as we're organizing text, you can organize paragraphs. You can organize these paragraphs of text. We have an example here, which H1 would be the space teddy bear. H2 would be the cotton fur. Next would be describing the sapphire eyes, and then the synthetic felt paws. And the person who created this believes that space teddy bear is the most important thing. So that's the toy the child is probably playing with, and then it's breaking down the other categories, the other features of the toy, and they're saying they're all equal features, so they're all going to be ranked H2, which makes sense if you think about things in like a logical manner. When you think of how things tier down from parent to child, and so on, in that type of fashion. Okay, so using headings correctly, so thinking about this even more. So we started out top with that space. We changed a little bit. Now we've went from, so we got that space heading incorporated as the most important heading. So that's the level 1. Then we have a nav menu. That's the level 2. Then we have a sidebar on the left-hand side of the screen, likely, and that's going to be an H2. And then we have some news. Then we have what our clients are saying. Then we have some ratings. That breaks off. That will be underneath of H2, and they will be H3s. And then you're going to have this H2 section with more H3s. And then there's an H3 which has sapphire eyes, and then has a child underneath, which would be how they're produced. So this will make sense for those involved in web development. They'll be like, oh, this makes perfect sense. For those who are not involved in web development, this will make a little bit more sense when we actually get into using Microsoft Word, which we will, and get into using Adobe. So we'll get moving with that because the clock is ticking. Okay, awesome feature of Microsoft Word is the accessibility checker. It will run through and automatically inspect your entire document, and it will list out all of the errors. We should be addressing errors, and then there'll be warnings. Warnings of potential issues. We should definitely try to fix potential issues. If we don't, it's not great, but the document should be accessible. But the errors are, accessibility violations that we definitely need to fix. So let's fire up the Microsoft Word demo. Okay, so we have a document in front of us here with places I'd like to visit. And in this document, I deliberately, not tagged it or anything like that. So we look through, and it's talking about my travel plans. It says I'd like to, I guess it's been using this document for a while. Let's fix that. List I'd like to visit in 21. So I'd like to head back home and go visit the Scottish Highlands. I said that I was planning on, driving around and doing the whole Scottish coast from the east coast to the west coast, and maybe checking out some of the islands as well. So when I look at this document, I think, hey, probably the most important point is places I want to visit. So I'm gonna grab this places I want to visit in 2021, and I'm gonna make that in H1. So that's the H1 heading level 1. So that's all squared away. So this little bit of text here is good. I'm happy with that. My 2022 travel plans. Okay, that's pretty important. So I'm gonna mark that as an H2. That's a good solid subheading. So that's marked as H2. Okay, places I'd like to visit. I've been obsessed with, my wife and I have been obsessed with visiting this place called Reunion Island. It is in the middle of nowhere. It's in between Australia, New Zealand, and India. So I'm really want to visit. So here you go. You'll learn about where I want to go. So Reunion Island. So I'm going to tag Reunion since that's pretty important. Not as important as my 2022 plans. I'm going to move that down to be a level 3 heading. Okay. So I'm planning on visiting Reunion Island and Mauritius for my 40th birthday. But it's quite a trek. It's going to take me, I think about 24 hours of flights to get there. So it's going to take a while. From the U.S., you got options of going through New York, Dubai. Or you got options from on the west coast of the U.S. to go from LA to, I believe it's Adelaide or Perth, and then over from there, Adelaide, Hong Kong or Singapore, and then over there. So you got a couple of flights either way. So we've got this image right here, and it's an image of an inland waterfall. It's beautiful. So I'm going to add some alt text to this because if I'm blind or visually impaired, I might not be able to see this, and it's important. I think it lets the viewer know why the island of Reunion is so beautiful, and why I want to visit. So I'm feeling a little lazy, so I'm going to have you guys in chat describe the image that you see, and then we'll use what you guys see in chat. So whoever's feeling brave can create our alt text for this. Thank you, Mr. Burrows. Okay. So I'm going to right click on the image. I'm going to format the picture. I'm going to move along to the picture. I'm going to move along to here. Third option, layout and properties. I'm going to add the alt text. The title of the image is waterfall. And then we're going to have the description in there. We'll use waterfall pouring into a circular lagoon. Great description. Fantastic. Okay, so we scroll down to the next. Okay, this is something I'm really excited about. This is bubble tent camping in the hills of Reunion. So I'd love someone to describe that. So describe what you see in the image. And remembering not to use image of, picture of. Beautiful. Wow. No, that's not actually. Yeah, that's probably my favorite one. Either Jacqueline or Alexandria. Yep, Space Looking Dome. Yep, there's a lot. Yeah, Tammy. Yeah, there's tons of really awesome chat here. Yep, lots of good suggestions. So I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna format the picture. I'm gonna move to layout. Bubble shaped dome with bed inside, sitting on a deck overlooking the landscape. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so, oh wait, Mauritius is really important. That's the next island we're going to visit while we're right next to Reunion. It makes sense to go pop over and see Mauritius, do some island hopping. Cool things about Reunion and Reunion's actually considered part of France. So if anyone here is a European citizen, which I'm not anymore, for better or worse, if anyone here is a European citizen, they can actually go from France, or they could go from France, fly directly to Reunion, from my understanding, actually not use a passport. And then when they get there, they can use euros too. So it's pretty cool. So Mauritius is really important. And I'm going to tag that as an H2, like I did with Reunion. So that's going to be an H2. Okay, we have another awesome image here, and I would love to see what people come up with this. We've got some horses riding on a beach. Looks like we've got some tikis in the background, palm trees, vegetation, and a giant rock, and some boats, and so let's see what folks come up with. Technically France, yep, it is technically France. Yep. Jacqueline is on a roll. Jacqueline, I'm going to steal your thinking. So again, tropical beach with people horseback riding with large natural rock formation in the background. That's awesome. You guys are the best. Okay, 2023. Oh, I had an extra 2, and I'm unfortunately not going to be alive in 2,000 years' time. 2023 travel plans. So if I'm going to use the same thinking as I did before, and I'm not quite sure, this was an H2, and now I realized I made a mistake. Reunion was actually an H3. So I'm going to scroll back down and fix that, because we got to check what we do. I'm making that an H3. Beautiful. Going down, 2023 travel plans is going to be an H2. Thinking about New Zealand, but maybe I could go somewhere else. So we fixed the structure, which was really important. And next we're going to go and just let's see if the document's accessible. So we're going to check for issues in the document, and we're going to go down to check for accessibility. No accessibility issues are found, so that's awesome. There is ways to create some issues. Let's create an issue really quickly. I'm going to go into this image, and I'm going to take the alt text away. Going to rerun the inspector. Check for accessibility. Oh, we have an error. And the error is missing alt text. And it explains what the issue is when you hit it. Okay, it tells us why to fix it, and then how to fix it. So Microsoft does this now with numerous of their productivity products. So it's totally awesome. So you don't need to be an accessibility expert. You basically need to be able to click on the accessibility checker and follow directions. It will, tell you why you need to do it, and then how to do it, and then there's even more steps as well. So that's great. We're going to transition back to the slide deck, because time is ticking. No, the session was starting at 1. Hey, Jen, yeah, don't even worry about it. I'm using AI captioning. That's fine. The session was at 1, no problem. Okay, so making documents accessible, we're now thinking about portable documents. Portable document format, commonly known as PDFs. PDFs quite often created. You can use obviously you could use Adobe, the full package. Or you could most folks tend to use Microsoft Word. They use Microsoft Word and then they hit File, Save As, and then save it as a PDF. So we're going to look over the action wizard. We're going to look over images. We're going to look over structure. We're going to look over format, and we're going to add the tags, remove the irrelevant, and reading order. So some things to think about. Easiest way to make a PDF accessible is creating a clean, accessible Word document and then saving it as a PDF. That will fix vast majority of accessibility issues, if not all. We've obviously got tag tree, which is a map which explains how a screen reader is going to read the document. Other techniques is making sure that the document's obviously tagged appropriately. For those, again, it's in web, they'll realize that this looks really, really similar to HTML development. So, HTML markup. Okay, so we have a tag tree there. This is the structure. The document is been tagged in, and it's kind of like it's very similar to DOM order in web accessibility and in accessibility when how a website reads. So DOM order would be going from top to bottom, left to right in logical order of how the website was authored. There's lots of carryover between authoring websites, which makes sense, and documents. So let's get into Adobe. Okay. Okay, so it just so happened to use the previous document. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the process. If somebody sends you a document, or you come across a PDF document, and you're like, hey, I need to make sure this is accessible, because it's the right thing to do, and obviously you want to make sure we're complying with Maryland state law. Obviously that's extremely important, especially for state employees and vendors that are working with the state. So we've got this electronic document in front of us, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Action Wizard. So it's a real quick start, and then we're going to hit Make Accessible, and then we're going to hit Start. Okay. So usually this is blank. Either this section right here, the title is blank, and it's actually going to be marked. It's going to be pre-checked with Leave as is. So you be really careful when you look at the title, and make sure the title makes sense, because quite often this title is just a string of jargon numbers and letters. So let's make sure that looks good. Plus I want to really visit one code fast. And there's no hit OK. Okay, so I'm happy with it. The document is an English document. Right now it's a searchable image. So this is just an image. So this document is a picture. So we're moving from a picture to a document that can be interacted with and manipulated. Click OK. So this document is just a simple document. There's no need to detect form fields. If it was a form, we would use that, but it's not, so we won't. So no, we're going to skip this step. It's English. The document's English. We're going to set English. Adobe will detect all figures in this document. Wonderful. And display any figures with missing alt text. I believe this is, I think I've created a couple of deliberate issues that we have to fix. Click OK. Yes, so we know that this document, right, we know that this is a waterfall. So we'll just add that. It's a waterfall pouring into a lagoon. Okay. and we'll go to the next image. And this is a dome-shaped tent sitting on a wooden deck overlooking a nice view. Okay, did anyone notice the mistake I made with this alt text? Yep, good. Yep, thanks, Daniel, Andrew, Tommy, definitely appreciate it. Yep. Yep, so we'll take that out. We'll add save and close. So the accessibility checker wants you to identify all of these images first, all of these figures. So if you imagine you've created like a 40-page report for your job, whatever agency office you're at, and you've got like images and tables and charts and infographics all over the place, you could literally be spending hours entering that alt text. So it's, definitely important to spend that time and take that time as you author in that document. And it's, crucial that alt text makes sense. So everything's already pre-checked. I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to hit start checking because everything looks good there. Okay, and we have our results on the left-hand side of the screen. First, we have two issues identified. One is document, one is heading. Let's open that up. It wants us to look at logical reading order. It can't figure it out itself. The AI hasn't figured out how to do that yet. So it needs to make sure is the document in good order, and we can check that. Okay, so when you're in this situation, you're tasked with going through the document and making sure the document makes sense. So I'm going to hit close there, and then I'm going to hit accessibility. I'm then going to hit reading order, and then I have this reading order menu popped up. And I instantly realized that this is tagged as span text. And I'm like, hey, no, that's actually really important. That's actually going to be my H1. Okay. This is tagged as P's, paragraph text, so that's good to go. And next, we've got our travel plans. That's super important. And that's going to be H2. And then we're like, okay, what have we got? The country of reunion. That's going to be heading level 3. We're still moving down. I see that there's an issue here with there's multiple tags here, and there's a chance when a screen reader accesses this, it's gonna like interrupt. It might say reunion and Mauritius and then start stuttering almost. So I'm just gonna grab that entire piece of text in one block, and I'm just gonna tag it as it's just text. It's plain text, real simple. Good. So that just becomes one block of text. And something for you guys to think about for the non-web dev folks, each block of text is part of that logical reading order. So we're gonna look at that in a second once we finish this page. Okay. I'm now switching to page content order on the reading order menu. And let's just see if it makes sense. So it's gonna read, a screen reader would read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. That makes sense. So I'm going to go back to structured types, and I'm going to go further down my document. Okay, so we know the bubble tent image. We know that we're squared away with that. We have the alt text there, so people can access that. That's good. Mauritius, we know that was going to be in H3 because the next country we're going to visit. Beautiful. Text is all in one block there. Great. There's an image there. Let's just double check to make sure page content order is correct. Sometimes it will actually be out of order. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Awesome. Okay, we go back to structure types. Travel plans for 2023. That is going to be a heading level 2. And then we're going to, this is good with text there, so that's great. So the color contrast needs manual inspection. I'm gonna say that this is accessible. I've already looked ahead of time and I know that this is accessible. When it might not be accessible is if you're using maybe a light gray text on a white background, which sounds crazy until you see people build websites that look like that, which is, it's sometimes things that look really artistic and pretty and look great, aesthetically pleasing, unaccessible. So we do have color contrast testing tools, and I'm going to show you one really quickly, even though this is kind of outside of the scope of what we're doing here. Okay, just fire up Chrome real quick, and the tool that we have. Sorry, it's going to move this. A pretty good color contrasting testing tool is by a company called Level Access, who are based in Tyson's Corner of Vienna in Virginia. We use this all the time. We'll hit an accessible color picker, and you're literally able to hit foreground, and then it's interesting, this plugin, this is not working. Yeah, for whatever reason. So yeah, go ahead and download Google Chrome if you don't have it already, and then go into the Chrome store and then pick Accessible Color Picker and have a play around with that tool. I've never tried to use it before during a webinar, and I can tell it's not going to cooperate no matter what I do. So let's go back. Okay. Let's go back to. Okay, so we just finished. Okay, so we are at the end of the session. This is an opportunity for you guys to throw some questions in chat, which would be awesome. If I don't instantly have the answers or I can't think of them, throw your email in chat too, and I'll get back to you. One awesome thing is we do record the sessions. They're eventually loaded up to they're uploaded to our YouTube channel, and the links from the channel are on the Maryland Department of Disabilities web accessibility page, and feel free to go in there and have a look at those anytime you'd like. But I'm going to just open chat up and see what people are saying. Does anyone know of companies like Level Access that give discounts to nonprofits for AD accessibility? I would reach out to some very good companies. So there's some very good companies like Level Access are great. DQ, they're based in Herndon. DQ is the leading accessibility consultancy on the planet. So them and probably a company called Funker in Sweden. But I'd probably be easier to deal with the folks at DQ because of the fact they're based in Herndon, Virginia, and they've already worked with the state of Maryland on projects, and they're very good people to work with. And they're obviously a business, but if you talk to them about if the charity or the nonprofit has some financial constraints, you might be able to speak to those guys about doing that. What's the difference between using okay, so when you hit label, the null alt attribute is used when you're doing HTML markup for websites, and hitting decorative, which we didn't do today. When we hit decorative, which was an option as we typed in the alt text on Adobe PDF, that would just ignore. So it's basically the same thing. It's similar because one is for PDFs and the null alt attribute is for creating accessible websites. Why didn't you bold? Yeah, I wasn't, Lorraine, yeah, so typically, no, I don't use bold. I just use the markup, whatever the Microsoft markup is for H1, H2, H3 when I'm authoring documents. That's kind of, a good best practice for accessibility, and that's what I've been doing. If you're trying to, you can increase the size of the font on normal, so change it from there. No worries. Thanks, Lorraine. I appreciate it. Does anyone else have any other questions? And thank you so much. You've been definitely awesome audience. Awesome, Kendra. I appreciate that. Okay, Leah, let me have a little look. Sorry. Hi, Leah. So if you make a document accessible in Word and then convert it to Word, is it no longer accessible? If you create a document in Word and follow the principles that we've just went over, use the accessibility checker, save it as a PDF, the document should be accessible. But I would say the document it will, and also the alt text that you created will carry over. So yeah, creating offset. If you that original document, if you make that original document accessible, as you move it to PDF, it should be accessible. Well, it will be accessible, but it's definitely worth. You'd still need to go in there and probably tag the document, but it should. You may or may not need to. Sometimes it just depends. If you're running the latest update, you shouldn't need to. So hopefully that answers your question. Have you seen any recent improvements in Google Apps accessibility functions? I know that Google is constantly working on making their application more accessible. I've not seen anything recently, but I know that they're obviously very compatible with Google's very compatible with screen readers, and I believe people are starting to use it with Braille output. So yeah, Google's they spend a lot of money and resources and time and energy on accessibility, which is awesome. So yes, they're definitely one of the front runners. Teresa's saying I've had issues with that. Yeah, so if it's me myself creating a document, I'll create a good base document in Word, make a good source document, make sure it's accessible, and then I'll save it. And what I've found 99% of the time is the new PDF is accessible, but often what I've noticed is it sometimes messes up document order. So I have to go in and actually play around and move the document order around a little bit. But generally, yeah, it's in good shape. Any more questions? You're working with a consultant to create a new website for us. Tommy, are you part of the state of Maryland? Can you ask me questions? Absolutely. Happy to help. Help anyone that's making wants to make websites accessible. But obviously our purview is the state of Maryland. And obviously we work very closely with our partner agency, which is the Department of IT. Those guys are fantastic, and there's a very big accessibility push. So a lot of our efforts, in all honesty, is working with the Department of IT. Okay. And my email is in chat right now. Yeah, Tommy, it sounds like just shoot me an email, reach out, and we can connect. And we're definitely we're a small team, but I'm definitely open to having a chat and talk to. If you like, we could talk to your web development folks about some things that should definitely be on the website. No problem. Okay, if there's no more questions, I'm gonna sign off, but obviously my email's up there in the chat. Yep, Jacqueline, you have a good day too. Thank you for everybody who attended. Everyone was awesome, and I definitely appreciate any feedback on the session. If you think there's anything that we should add or put in there. This is obviously a 101 session, so it's just the basics. This is not every element of making documents accessible, but it's just a kind of get your feet wet session. Okay, I'm just throwing my email in the chat again. And you can also go to the Maryland Department of Disabilities website and hit web accessibility, and you'll find my email address at the bottom of that too. Yeah, everyone have a good week. Thanks so much. Bye for now.